migration update. Now, after a month of moving the code over, I can safely say that the old Vana'Gear project wouldn't have supported a player base of any type, any shape, any size whatsoever. Now, before I tell you why, let me first give a huge thank you to the Vana'Gear supporters out there. Y'all are few, but you really mean the world to me, and I really want to get an alpha to you guys as soon as possible, and I am working my butt off to achieve that goal. Once again, thank you so much. Now, let me give you one example why the OG Vana'Gear would have failed. Well, it used the gameplay ability system, or GAS for short. Now, there are a ton of great things to say about GAS, but one of the things that's not great is the amount of overhead that comes when using the system. The way I understand it is that if you even change one variable on your GAS character through the attribute system, it basically performs 3 calls just for that one variable. It calls a pre-update for the stat, it calls an update for the stat, and then it calls a post-update just for one stat change. Just if I wanted to lower your HP by 5 or something, you can remove this. You can do some other work to remove a lot of the bloat that comes along with GAS, but at that point, you're kind of designing your own system. And if you don't need a big system that's very complex, building one from the ground up generally is going to be a lot faster, more stable, and you'll be able to manage it a little bit better. I have footage of what the GAS system looked like pre-migration, and I'm going to go ahead and show you that now. If we notice, you'll see that the equipment ability triggers the moment I engage with the dummy. And for a couple of frames, parts of my body are clearly invisible, waiting for the next tick to update to their new skeletal meshes. Not good. Now, let me show you the new system. Much more lightweight, doesn't perform a lot of calls just because it doesn't need to. And let's see the difference that this makes when just changing out a proprietary system to something you design yourself. Here, each piece takes roughly 1 to 3 milliseconds to update completely on the server. That's removing the stats and updating them with new ones. And it finishes the entire visual equipment update in 1 frame. So the player never seems invisible, you never see anything through him, and everything just kind of flows. Much better. Now, moving on to the enemies of Vana'Gear and all the problems that encompass them. They were functional and they served their purpose, and all the code worked with the interactions between players, but there was a huge problem. I didn't have a way to turn off the replicated states. I didn't have a way to turn them off entirely. They always had their blackboards running. There was just so much overhead that in terms of actually having a couple of these things running on the server, I probably could cap it around 100 per map, which for an MMO, that is not the amount of enemies that you want to see as a player venturing into a vast world. To fix this issue, we kind of tackle it from a couple different perspectives. 1, we make sure that we're only using floating movement components. 2, we're kind of getting rid of state trees altogether, so none of that is happening on tick. All that is reserved for a mob manager that we designed, and I'll go into that in a second. And then we basically boil down the mob movement to the bare minimum that it needs to be in order to feel like it's something moving amongst the world. Now, let me talk about those managers for a second, because we use them to essentially determine if the pack of mobs that it's managing needs to be replicated to all the clients on the server. And if it doesn't need to be replicated to all the clients on the server, it will determine which mobs need to be moved and then replicate just a small list to the available clients, and then let the clients move them to their new locations. Normally, the client's performance would matter a ton, but that's where the next 2 systems come into play to alleviate the player performance. 1, NPCs that are behind your 180-degree cone of vision don't even move. They don't get updated. They perform no line traces whatsoever. They just don't move. 2, every single enemy mob except for some special mobs and the player models themselves are using what's called nanite skeletal meshes. Now, there's a couple of limitations that the nanite skeletal meshes, that's why you don't really want to use them for player models, but for just field mobs that are going to be roaming around the area and small NPCs like gate guards and stuff like that, these are perfect for those scenarios. The other piece of the puzzle is something called Unreal Animation Framework. Now, this system is extremely buggy. It crashes a lot. But one of the benefits of using this buggy, crashy system is that it essentially takes the load off of just that one tick. So we disable animations on the server entirely, and we don't really need to know what players are doing or what they're animating. We just need to know what abilities they're casting and what damages they're applying. And what you're left with is a system that allows a client to render up to, so far, 600 NPCs that are all casting animations at different times while also playing their own idle animations. It's pretty great. Now let me expand a little on what's been migrated over so far. All the job traits and weapon skill caps are back in. And to show off this progress, I'll be switching between Monk and Warrior. I'll test more in the future, but for the moment, we're just Warrior. So we'll go ahead and equip some gear to beat on the dummy with, and you'll notice the animations are back in, and a little better than before. They blend better in between movements and just feel overall more concise. Now, let's try swapping to Monk mid-fight and see what happens. You'll notice the sword was automatically removed and your fighting stance was automatically switched back to hand-to-hand. There is more that I've added back, but for the time being, I kind of want to just stick to the new stuff that we're adding and what we're changing about the previous systems when we're migrating the code over. One of the things that's changing is the way I'm handling abilities. Since I'm no longer using the gas system, I have to kind of build my own. So, I've done that. I made my own lightweight ability caller. And so far, I only have one ability, auto attack. The entire call or function completes in less than 1 millisecond on the server, and checking whether or not you and the enemy have a ton of different buffs and statuses. So I think that's pretty good, at least for an MMO. That's manageable. Moving on to an area that I'm going to change is quest. Before, I was kind of going with the generic MMO style of where you had fetch quest, you could go and complete the main scenario, similar to WoW and Final Fantasy XIV, but I think I kind of want to pivot a little bit to a different system, to a more dynamic system that makes the world feel alive. So, for example, let's imagine that you're walking through the fields of Zatar, just outside the city, and you see a cart making its way, but you notice that there's some goblins attacking the cart. So you assist in protecting the cart and its wares, making it safely back to the city. And although you didn't pick up any quest or interact with any NPC, no log told you to do what you were doing, you're still rewarded for the actions that you did. With all that being said, quest, I want to hold for the story. Okay, I'm done ranting. I've got a ton of things to do, and I want to try to get an alpha out as soon as possible, so I want to get to them. Anyways, thanks for watching. I hope you come back for the next devlog, and I'll see you then.